Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good. Rulin, thank you so much for sending that document from the media group. I have it and I will send it out right after this call. So thank you guys for that quickness. I appreciate it. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. I want to start at 12:50. If you have a question, then you can put your question in the chat room. I will say good afternoon. Post questions here. And everything that is going to be happening over the next 2 weeks, I'll discuss. You're going to get more detail through announcements. You're almost done. Don't give up. It's almost over. I do see that I have members from teams 1, 2, and 3, and then I also have members of the media group here. That's very important because you'll need to go back and tell your groups to either watch this video or just kind of brief them on kind of what's going on and what you need to be working on. But give me just a few seconds and I'll get started. I'm going to blank my screen so I can get a few more things set up, and then we'll get started right at 12:50 once a few more people come in. Okay, let's get started. So first off, I want to go, and for those of you who just came in, I did put the chat up where you could ask questions through chat. If you have a question, you can also raise your hand. I'm not requiring you to have your video on. You don't have to do all that. Next week, you will have to when we do the live presentations, but you don't have to do that now. But you have a question, just raise your hand either virtually by doing something like this or something like, I don't know, there's got to be another emoji for, I got to raise my hand. But you can post it here or just ask it out loud. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go over kind of what I sent out to all of you on Monday today, but also kind of what we've talked about over the last couple of days. I didn't mean to push that. Let's see here. Here. Let me see if I go here. And then now here's the announcements. So if you look at today's announcement, it obviously is focusing on kind of what you need to do for this week. Your first most immediate item is just taking your midterm. Everything that's in your midterm we have discussed. I also am trying to make this as easy as possible for all of you because I know we're not in a classroom to do some of the updates. So I have given you all the different chapters, the lectures, everything right here is everything that would be content that would be on your midterm. So what I suggest is that you have your browser open, which is your midterm, and then you have another browser open, which is this page. And then if you're looking for answers or you're trying to figure out things because you can't answer the question yourself, you'll have these different documents to go to as reference. There is no time limit on the test except for it has to be done by Tuesday night at midnight. Once you open it, you can close it and open it back up. Obviously, you could work with your group to get, kind of whatever you guys feel like is the best answers. We're in a virtual world, so I can't stop you from using, support from group members. But I also have, worded it in a way where I'm going to look for your answer. You may work with your group to come up with the answer, but there is some multiple choice, there's true, false, there's short essay. And as long as you're answering the question and it makes sense and it's right, I'll count it correct. It doesn't have to be a certain length. I'm not a stickler on, verbatim language coming from the book or whatever. I just want to make sure that you understand the concepts around small group communication and, public speaking, kind of what this blended class is all about. Now, once you get that out of the way, then you're going to begin working on the projects that are due for this week. And if you want to know what that looks like, you can click on this module right here, go to week 3, which is the week that we're in, and you will see that there are different things that are available here for you. Some you can see and some you can't. I have not made this live yet. I'm about to do that right now. The reason that I hadn't made it live is because I didn't want you working on it before we had our time to catch up and check in with each other. But what I would suggest is this lesson 3 and week 3 lesson and week 3 reading. Do not do anything with that until after you take the midterm, because it's just going to get confusing for you. Your midterm is on everything that was on week 1 and week 2. It has nothing to do with week 3 and week 4. So that's kind of how you should look at the midterm. Now, you do have another famous speech critique that's due by Wednesday night at midnight. And it's kind of setting the tone of where we're transitioning to. So your first thing that you did in the class as a group was that meet the band and the virtual vacation. I'm grading that this week. Your second group project is this political campaign. And so this famous speech critique is kind of showing you what a famous speech critique would look like, and not a famous speech, what a political campaign would look like, the language that they use, kind of, some platforms that they talk about or beliefs or stances, and kind of how they sell their candidate. Both Barack Obama and Arnold Schwarzenegger in these videos were actually running for office. So Arnold for governor, I believe, and Barack Obama. I think Barack Obama was senator and he was stumping for John Kerry or John Edwards. But both of these are just like campaign convention speeches. So you want to watch it, do your critique, like 3 paragraphs, what you liked, disliked, how would you grade this speech based on what you saw? And then you're going to give that feedback by Wednesday night at midnight. Those 2 things are your most important things at the beginning of this week. Don't think about the week 3 lesson. Don't think about the week 3 reading. Yes, you should be working with your group to come up with a candidate, because you do have your media day submissions that are due by the end of this week. But luckily, your media group has made it very easy and very manageable. There is no speech connected to this week's presentation. And so what that means is that if you click on this media day submission right here, you'll see what the guidelines are for media day. And they have put it here, what is mandatory, what is optional. So it says that you have to create a 10-slide PowerPoint. Each group must create a PowerPoint that'll be a joint presentation. And when your group has your PowerPoint together, introducing your candidate to the audience, then you're just going to hit reply. You're going to post your PowerPoint slide right here, and then you're going to hit reply. And then that's going to be submitted, and it's due by midnight the 17th. So I would suggest getting with your group, working on the midterm together, and then deciding what you're going to do for the media day PowerPoint. So again, they said a minimum of 10 slides and no more than 20 slides. And then they give you all these other different things that are either mandatory or optional components of what should be in that slideshow. So it's very important for you to take time as a group, make sure you're figuring out what you're going to do or not do, who's going to do what. Like, does someone have computer skills that they can put the slideshow together more easily? Does someone have more behind the scenes? They're better at research. They want to, be able to get the details, but they don't want to put the PowerPoint together. So you're going to split this work up and delegate it. And then you're going to create the PowerPoint and post it by the 17th at midnight. Any questions about this assignment that's due by Thursday night? You gave me a chance to drink my water. What'd you say, Isabella? Do you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay. Anybody else? Miguel, I saw you lit up. Did you have a question? Okay. So, like I said before, that part of this week is very manageable. Yes, you have to take a midterm, but once you look at the notes and you're able to kind of review based on what we've talked about, the questions are very easy. It's just taking time to, look at what they're asking, figure out what your answer is, and submit that. That's due by Tuesday night at midnight. Your famous speech critique, you have till Wednesday night at midnight. But this media day submission is going to take some time for your group to figure out what you want to introduce about your candidate to this audience. And then at the end, the media group and I are going to grade which PowerPoints have what they were required to have, and we're going to rank them 1 through 3. And then the class is also going to vote 1 through 3, and they're going to say which presentations they felt like were the best or worst. Now, obviously, most groups are going to vote for their own, but that's the reason that we put our votes in as well, to help even out some of that bias in people voting for their own presentation. At the end of the semester, or the end of next week, whoever's team wins the end of this political campaign gets a special treat from me, but I'm not going to say what that is until next week, because I want you to just compete and not be thinking about that. Now, there's only one other assignment this week that you need to be thinking about. So if you click on modules again, you go to week 3. This media day individual grade is connected to media day submission. So all you need to worry about is getting your group to submit their slideshow. And then this, it'll say at the very bottom, a text entry box. All this is kind of processing how things are going in your group. And so if you read what it says in that media days submission, it says you should be journaling from the first moment you found out who your group was. How's it going? Are you having trouble with some members? Are you struggling? Are you doing all the work? Is someone else not letting you do any of the work because they're doing it all? What's processing and what kind of delegation is happening in the group? This submission, you're going to discuss all that, and that's the only thing that you have to turn in other than your group's PowerPoint slide. Now, if I'm in a group with someone else who's turning in the PowerPoint slide, then the only thing I need to do is once my group turns in our PowerPoint slide, then I owe this submission. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the due date of this. I'm going to give you until the 18th at the end of the day, since your PowerPoint slide is due on the 17th by the end of the day. Let's see what someone just said. Is there a sample PowerPoint presentation? I will show you a sample PowerPoint presentation. I will post one. That's a good question, Miguel. Let me see if I have one. Because I'd prefer not to post it, because then people tend to just copy and paste it. Not that you would do that, Miguel, but other people. So let me see. If I look at my Google Slides. So this would be an example of the Media Day PowerPoint slide from a few semesters ago. And so if I put this in presentation mode, I see that this is kind of their intro slide. Then they are kind of talking, they just to add a slide, because they had to do the same thing. They had to add as many slides as the other groups. They do a breaking news slide. Then they say, we are the media group. And then they give kind of what the guidelines were for today. Then they give us, some of the issues or stances that they're looking at. So for example, wildfires, COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. Then they have what their campaign slogan is. And their slogan was, we get the facts, so you get the truth. So that was their slogan, where the other groups were like maybe doing slogans based on their candidate. And so I'm not going to click through all of these slides, but I'll show you now another one from another group. So if I go back to this button, I'll show you a candidate's PowerPoint. So this would be the Tom Holland. This is the guy that was Spider-Man, the most recent Spider-Man, and they ran him for president. And so that was their opening slide. Then their next slide was their intro, so showing us, this is what each member is going to be doing. They had someone talking about the history and early life. They had someone who went over the accomplishments. They had someone who talked about why he's better than the other people, someone who critiqued the other candidates, and then someone who talked about why he was trustworthy. And then Trenton went back and did the conclusion, wrapped it all up for everybody. Now, what your group chooses to do in reference to introducing your candidate may be different than what this group did. But this group, this was their, they showed what the requirements were. Then they went into what their hashtag was. And then they went through what their slogan was, with great power comes great responsibility. And then you went into their intro, their history, etc. Now, what I would tell you is that part of what I critique them on is the look of the PowerPoint. So I'm looking that right there. I think their image could have been shrunk some. It looks off. It's not a good visual display. Now they did do great in having that slogan, and they got credit for having it, even though it was an optional thing that they could do. But it was a great relatable slogan, because that's the Spider-Man slogan. So, it's just thinking as a group, what do we want to create as our PowerPoint to kind of introduce our candidate, tell them about who we are, why he's better than the other people, critique the other people that are running. All these things would be examples of, what you could do for a PowerPoint, which could be fun. Okay, Miguel, does that help you understand kind of what we're looking for? Yes. Okay, perfect. Now, so that is all about Media Day. Now, the other assignment that is due, and this is what you would start working on after you do your PowerPoint submissions, is by Thursday night at midnight, maybe before then, your media group is going to post to the Great Debate page. And in this page, they will write questions where they will ask you a question you have to answer for your candidate. So for example, one person that is running is a superhero. It's also a famous actor. And they're running it as the actor. They're not running it as the superhero. And the question might be from the media group, what would your candidate do about the issue of global warming? And so now they've got to think about, okay, well, what would our candidate, what do we think his beliefs would be about global warming? Like, does he believe it exists? Like, the conservative, he may argue, global warming is just total natural progression of climate. We totally believe that this is just what the climate does. It changes. You're going to have droughts. You're going to have fires. You're going to have cold spells, and it's going to work itself out. Now, yeah, so Gabby, can you mute yourself?
What was that?
Someone is, it says that you're not muted, but it may be someone else. Let me see.
It's Erica.
Oh, Erica, thank you. Erica, can you mute your mic? Thank you, thank you, thank you. So for the great debate, that media group is going to post a question, and then from your group, you're going to figure out who has to answer it. Okay, so every group member has to have a response, but you guys get to divide up who's going to answer which question. So for example, the question might be, we're starting to see states like California take off their mask and begin to do business as usual. Do you believe that a vaccination by citizens should be a requirement for boarding airplanes, doing business, etc.? Now, some candidates are going to say, oh no, you know, the personal freedom, I shouldn't have to do that if I don't want to, whatever. Other people are going to say, absolutely, we need to keep our citizens safe. There's a story of a 35-year-old man that died last week of COVID with no complications of earlier ailments. COVID is still an issue. Everyone should be vaccinated. So as a group, you'll come up with what your answers are and you'll post those answers. This is not due until Sunday night at midnight. So after your group turns in your media day submissions, then your group is going to answer the debate questions and come up with what your responses are for that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay. So this week you have your midterm, you have your famous speech critique, you have to turn in your PowerPoint submission with your group. As an individual, you've got to process and do your journal and add what you feel like you guys did good on, could have improved on, whatever. And then you've got to answer your PowerPoint questions. Those are your 5 things that you have to do to be successful in this 3rd week of the semester. Next week is going to be the final presentation. I will post early about what that's going to look like. That's our live speech day that's on Tuesday, and everybody's required to be there for that day to present as a group. So if you haven't asked off work yet, if you haven't gotten a babysitter yet, if you've got things going on, please know that that's been advertised since the very beginning of the semester, and that day you have to be here to deliver your group speech. But I will post up earlier this week what that's going to look like what your group has to do as a group during that. Will we know when they'll post the question? How long will we have to respond? So the responses are, let me see, I have the document right here from Ruland. Let me see. Each group member should answer a minimum of 2 questions. And then a minimum of 30 seconds to a maximum of 3 minutes, the answer can be. But I will put up those guidelines, you know, probably as soon as we get off this call. But 30 seconds to 3 minutes is the length, and every group member has to answer 2 questions. And so, I mean, that's not going to take any time. Come up with the answer, record your video, post it. Okay, any other questions? Now, tomorrow I will have another Zoom meetup. So if your group looks at everything and you've got questions, if you're having trouble with the midterm and you want to ask me some questions of ones you're struggling with, I will be live and on Zoom from 12:45 till probably about this time, 1:15. I may stay longer if people show up, but I'm not just going to sit on here by myself forever. So I'll be on here at 12:45. If you've got questions, please show up. And then until the last person is on, then I'll get off after I've talked to everybody.
You don't have to show up tomorrow if you don't have any questions.
You
right?
do not have to show up if you do not have any questions. Exactly. I will miss you though. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, if you have no further questions, I'm going to stop the recording